Hello, and thanks for joining me today. This is the week two Kaltura Live number two, where we talk about the specifics of doing the informative speech outline, which will be due this coming up Sunday. Okay, so um, let's just let's just jump right into it and see where we go from there. Okay. Okay. The first thing you need to understand, a lot of students, for some reason, have never done an outline. I'm one of those people that I outline an email when I'm writing it to make sure I get everything that I need to get included in the email there so I can scratch it off or I can just have a physical reminder of what it is that I'm trying to do. That's what an outline is. It's something that's intended to help you write whatever it is you're trying to write, in this case, a speech. So it's going to guide you through the process of writing a speech. The second thing that it can do is that many times people who provide publicity for upcoming speeches and such as that will use these outlines as sort of a publicity thing. And if somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I need to know about blah blah," they'll look through their list and go, "Oh, well, you're in luck. We have a speech coming up on Tuesday about that," or whatever. So the outline can also help somebody, excuse me, who is looking for specific or particular information about your topic to know better whether or not you are going to cover that in the speech and whether or not it's worthwhile for them to attend it. That's because the outline, just like the speech, contains all of the elements that are necessary for the speech. Every time you write an outline, what you are doing is you are putting together sort of a blueprint for what the speech is going to look like when you get to the end product. And if you leave the door out or you forget to put the ceiling on, well, that's a problem. Okay. So this is what the outline does. It includes all the elements that are necessary for a speech. Sometimes students say, "Well, I didn't know you would put all that in there." Well, yeah, I do. I want to know exactly where you are going with this speech. Okay. And you will appreciate that when you get ready to put that speech together because it'll make it a whole lot easier for you. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about informative speaking real quickly. Informative speaking is exactly what it says it is. It is informing some audience about some topic. Okay. So you are providing information to your audience about a topic. Now, that might include at some point doing an opinion piece, but that's not what we're doing here in this class. What you are doing for the informative speech in this class is you are providing a speech on a topic by giving facts about that speech on which the audience can use to build knowledge or to build an understanding of that particular topic. Okay. And the whole point is to create that better understanding for the audience. So you're trying to not only discuss your topic completely, but you're also trying to convey to the audience what it is about this topic that's so important. And if you start with facts, which is a good place to start, you can build a great deal of knowledge from there because once you have the fact, you can go off in a number of different directions with that effort and create that solid understanding that we want at the end of the speech. Now, so the informative speech outline does a couple of things. Number one, it provides organization for your upcoming speech. Number two, it's not going to be as long as your speech. It's going to be about a third as long as your written out speech. But it is going to cover all of the material that you're going to put into the speech. It's going to contain attribution for factual material. What does that mean? When you use a fact from a source like the American Diabetes Association website or the Centers for Disease Control website, when you want to attribute the information that you are taking from that source to the source for a couple of reasons. One, it adds to credibility, and two, it also helps you establish, hey, I didn't make this up. This is true. Okay. So you need to, in certain parts of the speech, cite your source for the facts that you're citing, because that will make it more credible to your audience. Now, a lot of people say, well, I've been to speeches before and they talk about how they feel about this, that, and the other. That's a little bit different type of speaking. And, there's certain topics where you can use personal opinion or personal facts or whatever as part of the speech, because you have a certain level of experience there. But you should use those for illustrations and examples rather than as the actual facts. State the fact, say, and in my experience, here's what's happened. So you can use it as an explanation or an example, but don't use it as an actual fact. The reason for that is every one of us, no matter how similar we are, we could be identical triplets. We're not going to think exactly the same way as those other two triplets do. We're not going to do things exactly the same way. They might be pretty similar, but they're not going to be exactly the same way. So when we're stating facts, we're going to state those facts and use the attribution to give credit for the source that we used to get those facts. And then if we're going to use any opinion, we're going to identify it as such. I've worked in this area for 10 years, and in my experience, this is what happened. Or when I was doing my research, I ran across some information that I found interesting about blah, blah. Okay. So you can use those opinions or those personal examples as an explanation or as an illustration, but you don't want to try to pass them off as fact. So get the facts first and then use your personal stuff later. An outline creates what we call a step-by-step guide, okay? And so we start with a title. A title helps you to sort of tie everything together. And then also a title can be something that can attract attention, particularly to that person who's going through a number of different outlines and trying to decide which one they want to participate with. This is where you sum up what the whole thing is about. What's the topic? And invite the audience to come and listen to you. Keep it simple. Usually 1 to 4 words does the trick. You don't want a whole sentence or anything like that as your title. You want, diabetes and you, or something along those lines. And don't be vague. A lot of students think, oh, I'm going to trick my audience. I'm going to, I'm going to be real mysterious and all of that sort of thing. And the audience is going to love it. And they're going to want to come right into this speech. That's not always true. And what happens there is that a lot of times you wind up with the audience just walking out at that particular point. So make the title something that's true and to the point, and you'll be in good shape. The second thing you want to recognize at the top of your outline is what's the purpose? What's the general purpose? Now, last week in the discussion board, we talked about this difference between the general purpose and the specific purpose. The general purpose is, for our purposes in this class, to inform or to persuade. Okay. So that's all you would be putting there, is you would be putting to inform in this slot here. Okay. Now, the central idea comes next. Here's where you get to write a couple of sentences that tell what the speech is about. And you can do those in any way you want to. Your textbook tells you that asking a question is a good way to get into an informative speech, and it can be, but don't overdo it. Your textbook will also tell you that, making sure that it's focused on the audience is a good idea, and that too is a good idea. Okay, so you write a central idea that says, have you ever wanted to know the basics of XYZ? Question mark. Well, here we go. We're going to talk about that this morning. Or if you care about your health, you should be exercising. I'm here to get you started or tell you how to get started in an exercise program. Or if you're doing something about an individual, Beyonce is more than just a beautiful woman. She is all the things that she is. Okay. So the central idea is just that. It's just kind of a secondary thing that tells the audience or tells the reader, this is where we're going with this. And then you want that specific goal. Now, like the general goal was to inform and to persuade, the specific goal is what you want the audience to get from listening to your speech. What is it? Why are you doing the speech? What do you want the audience to get out of it? Because remember, and I've said this 100 times already in this class, the audience is the reason for the speech. So if you don't have a good reason for the audience to listen to the speech, chances are real good that they're not going to. So you want to make sure that your audience is invested in this topic and your audience is interested in this topic. By the end of our time together, you'll know so and so. My goal is to make sure you know blah blah. Okay. All right. Now, in these outlines, you have to state everything in a complete sentence format. Okay. We don't do topic formats for these outlines. We do complete sentence formats. And so you have to have a subject verb. It has to agree, all that kind of stuff. And you have to just state things in complete sentences. Well, why in the world would we do that? It makes it really easy when you begin writing that speech text to just simply pick up a group of copy and drop it into your speech while you're going and then elaborate on it. Okay, so that's one reason. Another reason is because when you state things in complete sentences, a lot of times they make more sense to you when you're writing them and to the audience when they're reading it. Okay, all right. So these are 4 things that we're going to put at the top of our informative speech outline, and we'll put the same things at the top of the persuasive speech outline. And then we're going to move into the actual speech itself. So these 4 things may or may not make it into your speech. Okay. It just kind of depends on how you're going to organize that speech and what purpose these things have for that speech. Okay. All right. Every speech that you do has, and every speech that everybody else does has 3 parts: the introduction, the body of the speech, and the conclusion. Okay. So let's talk about the introduction first. Okay. When you say introduction, what does that mean? It means you're introducing something to whomever or whatever you're trying to get the point across to. So the introduction of a speech tells the audience who you are. My name's Maggie Williams. And then I'm going to look at those 4 topics that we just went over, and I'm going to see what from there can I use to introduce what I'm fixing to talk about. Okay. It might be that central idea. That central idea might do it for me, or it might be the specific goal, either one. But you're going to tell your audience your topic, and then you're going to define it so that there's no question about what you're speaking about. Okay. You want to make sure that you do those 2 things to make sure that you get to the place that you want to be at by the time you finish the introduction. Okay. The third thing that you're doing is you want to tell the audience, how am I going to do this? One of the things in the description of how to do an introduction to your speech, there's about 17 things crammed into there. all you need is, here's what my topic is, and here's my plan to develop that topic. Okay. Your plan for developing the topic should be pretty simple. Usually, about 3 points will get you through a 5-minute informative speech, which is what this is. And so you're going to want to say, I'm going to talk about diabetes in you, and today I'm going to talk about what is diabetes. I'm going to tell you where it comes from, how it what it does, and that sort of thing. And then we're going to talk about how it affects the body, and then we're going to talk about ways that you can control it, because there's not a cure for it yet. Okay. So you're telling your audience, here's how we're going to do this. And that's usually really helpful to the audience, because first of all, they can sit back and, and relax and get ready to listen. And also, if they don't need this information, they can pick up and go someplace else. Okay. And then the fourth thing you want to do in the introduction is to repeat that specific goal. What is it that the audience is going to get from listening to this speech? The audience will be very well versed in knowing about the disease of diabetes and some of the things that it does to a person who is affected by it, and perhaps the family who is affected by it. Okay. Okay, so that's what we're going to for the introduction. Introduction doesn't have to be very long. It just needs to be complete. What is the topic? What is the plan for developing that topic? Then we move into the body of the speech, and the body of the speech is the biggest part of the speech. It's where we get all of the information. It's where we get all of the examples. It's where we get all of the relationships among the topics that we're talking about and that sort of thing. Still, we have to go in a certain order. It's important to give the basics first, make sure that your audience is all on the same page as you get started, so that you don't lose somebody right there from the start. Then you would move into each one of your points specifically, state the point, back it up, use the attribution that you got for that particular source. Tell that point's purpose to the speech, give an explanation, give an example, something along those lines. And then we move into the next point and we repeat the process. Transitioning, that's where you change. Transition means to change. Transitioning among the points makes it so that you can go evenly from point A to point B, and it doesn't create a huge break. Now, some people do that. Some people say, okay, I'm through with that point. I'm going to go to the next point. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to almost slide from point to point, so that the audience is not interrupted, so that the thought process is not interrupted, and so that the audience gets what you're saying easily. Okay. Now, while you're doing the body of the speech, this is a good time to start watching the clock, because this speech has to be between 4.5 and 5.5 minutes, or about a 5-minute speech. I tell students all the time, okay, get your phone out and turn it to the stopwatch and click on it and clock 5 minutes and don't say a word. Okay. That's hard. It's hard to just sit there and not say a word for 5 minutes. But when you start putting together a speech, 5 minutes goes like that. So you need to be watching the clock so that you're not going over that 5-minute mark by much. And if you are, you're still within the 5:30. The timing does count. If you don't make it to 4.5 minutes, that counts against you. If you go over the 5.5-minute mark, that counts against you. So keep that in mind. And then we move into the conclusion. The conclusion is exactly what it says it is. We're fixing to finish. Okay. And, I guess you could hold up a sign that says the end, but that's not what we do in speech making. What we do instead is we sort of try to bring everything together. We remind the audience of where we've been. In your book, it'll tell you that you should review what you've just gone over. And some students take that literally, and they start with point A and point B and point C, and they go through the whole thing again. No, 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 no. You just need to review give an overview of what you talked about. Today we talked about what is diabetes, what it does to a person's body, and how you can control that. That's enough. Okay, so you don't have to go back through all the information that you've just gone through. Instead, you're going to summarize that. Then you're going to help the audience understand what this information can do for their knowledge level, and how all this information comes together and produces your specific goal, which is what you're trying to get to here. And then you provide a closing statement. It says here that says the end without saying it in those words, and that's exactly what it is. Something that tells the audience, okay, I'm done, but it doesn't say the end. Instead, you just sort of stop talking, and the audience knows that you're through because you have used that closing statement. Okay. Other things to remember: everything has to be done in a complete sentence format. You need to include those references from, and how do you do that? A lot of people don't know that. According to the New York Times, the Centers for Disease Control website section on XYZ indicates President Joe Biden announced Tuesday. You cite the source for the information and tell how they contributed it to you. And then go back through what you've written, and look at it and see if everything is in just the right spot. Sometimes you think that you're doing things in the right order, but then when you get around to looking at it a second time, you go, I really need to put point 3 up under point 1 instead of going straight to point 2, and then come back to it again in point 3. Okay, so just making sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. If you like visual aids, and I like visual aids, then you're certainly welcome to use them. You do not have to use visual aids in your informative speech. You will have to use visual aids as part of your persuasive speech. It's part of the requirements. So it's probably a good idea to get used to using it. Now, what is a visual aid? A visual aid is something that you are showing the audience that gives them a more complete picture, a more complete picture of what it is you are talking about with your words. Okay. I think that visual aids help complete the picture. Okay. Now, let me give you an example. I had a student one time who did a speech about big cats of the jungle. Okay. Well, we've all been to the zoo. We've all seen all those different kinds of felines that are at the zoo. And we probably recognize things like tigers and lions, but maybe not much further than that. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're helping our audience understand those things. So the young woman that did the speech on big cats of the jungle would say, okay, this is a lion, and she would hold up a picture of the lion. Okay, now you can hold that picture up. You can put it on a board behind you, and use a PowerPoint type thing, something along those lines if you want to. Okay, make sure that the audience can see them. Okay, and make sure that you're not using something that's really obvious. Had a student one time did something, I can't remember what she did on social media, but she was doing something on social media. And so this was her visual, her cell phone. She said, I do my social media on a cell phone. Well, everybody knows what a cell phone looks like. And that's not a completer. That's just something to hold up. Okay. So you can hold these things up. You can put together a poster. You can, take things in a magazine or something like that and point to them, poster type things if you want to, whatever works for you. Visual aids can be very helpful. So consider that. If you're going to use visual aids, In your informative outline, you make a list of those visual aids that you're going to use. I'm going to use a picture of Joe Biden. I'm going to use a picture of Ron DeSantis, and I'm going to use a picture of Donald Trump. And then out to the side, I'm going to tell you why I'm using that. I'm using President Biden's picture because I want to make sure you know what he looks like. I'm using DeSantis because he's a Republican candidate for president, and so is Trump. So I'm going to use those for those reasons. So you've got the what is the visual aid first, and what is it being used for? Okay. And you put that right after the conclusion. Then you go to the bibliography. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Let me get a Kleenex real quick, and I won't. Then you go to the bibliography. The bibliography is where you recap all of the outside sources that you've used for this speech in a summary type list at the end of the outline. It must be done in APA style, and in your instructions about how to do the outline, there is an APA style checker which will help you put it in proper APA style. There was a change in the way APA style was done about 4 or 5 years ago now. And some people are still doing it the old way, and some people are not including all the things that are supposed to be there. Make sure that you know what APA style is. If you don't know, go to apa.org, which is sort of the mothership of all things APA, and you can find it there, I'm sure. And if not, holler at me and I'll try to help you some. Okay, so those are the things that your informative speech outline should include, and that's kind of the process that you should go through in order to make sure that you are accomplishing that. If you've got questions about that, shoot them to me. If you've got concerns about any of this, let me know that too, and we'll see where we go from there. Thanks for listening.